Welcome to Cricket World TV Hotspot. It's been a dramatic week in county cricket, and here to discuss it with me, John Pennington, I'm delighted to welcome Matt Carter. Morning, Matt.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm very, very well. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Good stuff. There seems to be a slight delay between Matt talking and me hearing, but we shall crack on regardless and hope that that sort of sorts itself out as the show goes on. We're going to take a look back at three formats of the game this week for the first time in the season. The LV County Championship, that takes a break now through until August. We've got the conclusion of the group stages of the T20 Blast to look back at, and the Royal London One Day Cup is underway too. So Matt, let's start with the LV County Championship Division 1 as the teams head to their sort of, it's not mid-season, it's towards the end of the season break now, if you like. Just give us an update on who's on top and maybe any teams that the break doesn't come at a good time for.
Yeah, so Yorkshire have gone back on top of the championship. I think it's the fourth week on the run where they swapped places with Nottinghamshire. They finally found some killer instinct actually this week. They beat Middlesex, who really are in dire need of the break. Actually, Middlesex, they're spiralling towards a potential relegation battle if they don't sort themselves out. But yeah, Yorkshire top of the table. It was an excellent win over Middlesex. They've struggled to bowl sides out on the final day once or twice this season, so it was reassuring they did that, and it coincided with Adil Rashid probably for once finally producing the sort of performances that you want on your spinner on a last day pitch. So they go top of the table, and you'd say that along with Notts, they probably are favourites to lift the trophy. I mean, Warwickshire were one of the four we talked about last week, but they had a shocker at Horsham this week against Sussex. They were bowled out for a second innings 99, and it was all too familiar capitulation from them. They seemed to put the odd result or two together and then just fold dramatically once they've got back into the reckoning, and it was the same old story. And their batsmen, I think I was looking at the stats on Friday, and they don't really have anybody who scored over 500 runs apart from Ian Bell, and he hasn't played for them since the opening months of the season. So their title challenge is probably starting to fade, but you don't want to write them off just yet. That win for Sussex was massive though over Warwickshire. They can go into the break now resting a lot more easier than they perhaps might have done. They looked in danger of really entering a relegation battle for the final weeks of the season and perhaps being a little bit reliant on the weather with Northants as their final fixture. But that win at Horsham is huge for them. It gives them a massive cushion over Lancashire. Probably to overhaul Sussex would have to win 3 or 4, and they've only won 2 this season, and both are against Northants. So definitely an excellent week for Sussex and Yorkshire.
And if we have a little look at Division 2, that's getting quite exciting at the top. Well, maybe not at the top, but certainly the battle is on for that final promotion spot.
Yeah, it's intriguing in the second division. I mean, we had Worcestershire and Hampshire seemingly running away with it for the majority of the season. Then suddenly Hampshire started to fall away. They started to fold a little bit. Worcestershire just cantering away with the league. They won this week without Syed Ajmal to shut a few people up who were claiming they were a one-man team, and Darren Mitchell scored another massive 100 for them, and they look destined for the top flight now. And the points record, I think, for Division 2 is actually in danger the way Worcestershire are going at the moment. But as you say, there's a real battle now for the second spot. In a weird way, Surrey losing to Kent was a decent result for Hampshire, but in another way, it's brought Kent right into the mix. They've won 3 in the bounce. No other side in the country has won 3 championship games in the bounce this season, so they're flying, and the break for them has really come at the wrong time. And then, of course, we've got Essex as well, who've won, I think it's 2 and 3 there, right in the mix too. And certainly for Hampshire, they will be delighted to have a month off just to regroup, revitalise, because they need something. They need to get back on track, Hampshire, because they've got 3 form teams really breathing down their neck, and it's looking really interesting now, that battle for second spot. And then finally, Derbyshire, another side who seem to have peaked just in time for the break, so that'll be frustrating for them, but obviously better late than never considering the start that they've had.
Yeah, one other thing just to signpost here, Matt, is that you've done a sort of a team of the season so far in the county championship, and that must have been quite a challenge to get all the players in and make sure you didn't have too many overseas players and everything in there. So I think you did a super job with that.
Yeah, it was difficult. I mean, there was a plethora of batsmen you could have picked, but choosing seamers was actually there isn't that many standout seamers who aren't overseas bowlers. I mean, you probably look at the best bowlers. You've got McGoffin and Ajmal, and if you're having one overseas player, you've got to have Ajmal. So your seamers are a little bit mixed. I think we had Jack Brooks in there because he is the leading wicket taker in Division 1. And Mark Footick we had in there from Division 2 who's had a remarkable season. But I think certainly it's probably been a season for batsmen, you'd say. Look at Adam Lyth, Darryl Mitchell and James Vince and then a couple of others. You'd reckon that team we've selected, you'd pick a turning wicket and let Ajmal go crazy on it, I think.
Good stuff. Well, let's move on to the shortest format of the game then, the 2020 Blast. All sorts of drama this week. We've had Luke Wright scoring back-to-back centuries, more big hitting from around the grounds, but we now know the quarter-final lineup. Just if you can give us an update on what we saw earlier in the week and just remind us of which teams are in the quarterfinals and who they're playing and when, if you've got that to hand.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, it's been an absolutely dramatic week, really. It's been the best till last, really, for the T20 Blast. So we've got the quarterfinals in Lancashire v Glamorgan. Glamorgan sealed their spot on Friday night, pretty ruthlessly destroyed Gloucestershire, and they needed to win. And yeah, as long as they won, they went through. Then we've got Surrey v Worcestershire. Worcestershire sealed their spot with a win over Derbyshire on Friday night. Ross Whiteley, I think, scored 84 off 38 or something. He hit 9 sixes in that knot, which is pretty incredible. Then we've got Essex v Birmingham. You'd say Essex will be resounding favourites in that one, although curiously they have lost now 3 on the bounce, Essex, which is strange considering how good they have been. Obviously Luke Wright smashing that 100 in that record chase. And then finally we've got Notts v Hampshire, which is probably the most intriguing quarter-final, but you watched Notts on Friday night in that dramatic game at Headingley and they were just brilliant chasing that target. Oh, the guys they've got, that batting lineup, it is so deep, and it's going to be a really interesting quarter-final lineup next weekend, and definitely one to keep an eye on. But it's been a brilliant week. I mean, the number of ridiculous individual performances has just been outrageous. It has been raining sixes this week.
Yes, it certainly has. So it's keeping an eye on that. Well, mainly on Twitter and thinking, well, what next? You know, we've got John Hastings, Luke Wright, as you mentioned there, Ross Whiteley as well. So all sorts of cracking performances, and we hope, fingers crossed, the weather stays good next weekend and we get some absolutely brilliant quarterfinals as well. And the third tournament then underway now this season, the Royal London One Day Cup, I should say. Early days yet, Matt, but what have you made of the opening fixture? I think there was a rather convincing win for Derbyshire yesterday.
Yeah, Derbyshire absolutely mauled Hampshire yesterday, which was probably a real shock, that one. But it's an interesting tournament because it gives teams like Derbyshire, whose seasons are pretty much drifting into nowhere, it suddenly gives them another chance to really be competitive in something, and it's quite good time in the way it's come like that. Middlesex lost again yesterday. Their one-day form over the last few years have just been wretched for whatever reason, and Glamorgan, who made the final last year, were the team to beat Middlesex. And then there was another Roses clash, which was a high-scoring game. Yorkshire beating Lancashire, so Yorkshire getting over that Friday night disappointment over Notts. It's an interesting one, this tournament, 50 overs rather than the 40 that it was last year, which has had mixed reviews, but certainly going to be an intriguing one to watch. I think today we've got Nottinghamshire v Sussex, should be a real quality game with Luke Wright in the form he is and that batting lineup that Notts have got. So keep an eye on that one today, I'd say.
Absolutely. You mentioned Luke Wright there, and I know you can't think of an example of a player scoring back-to-back 2020 centuries. I can't either. I was just a bit distracted earlier because Dwayne Smith's just gone 2 in 3 innings in the Caribbean Premier League. So I think it might happen again sometime because the more and more 2020 cricket that's being played and the players these days. But certainly, yeah, Luke Wright, if he turns it on in the 50-over game, who knows what might happen. What about games to pick out this week that you would be keeping your eye on, and which game would you really like to go to? Obviously, we'd probably all like to go to each and every one of the 2020 quarterfinals, but putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, there's a game today, Lancashire v Hampshire, which is even at this early stage is pretty important considering both of them lost yesterday. I think it's only a 8-game tournament, so if you're going to lose your first 2, you're going to probably need to win 5 of your next 6, which is going to be a tough ask. So that's an important one. Essex v Worcestershire, there's another one today. 2 sides who are going pretty well in one-day cricket, and then, as you say, the 2020 quarter-final lineups looks exciting, and particularly that game between Notts and Hampshire. I think in the other 3, you'd say the Group 1 as a favourite. So although Surrey v Worcestershire, the season Worcestershire are having, you wouldn't be surprised if they made it to finals. They're just on such a roll of momentum that it's going to be well worth a watch, that one as well.
Good stuff. I think from memory I predicted Surrey to win this year's T20 tournament, so we'll see how they go and if my prediction holds up. So there we are. Well, that's about it for this week's Hotspot. Matt, thank you very much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks very much.
And thank you very much for watching us here on Cricket World TV.